ready to offer up the transmission, so I thought the best thing to do was to lay the transmission shafts out along with the shifter forks to make sure I got everything right before I try to offer this up and put it inside. Then I'm not sure. It might be it's easier to assemble this thing with the case laying this way. I might end up doing that, but the shafts stick through, so it's going to have to be, you know, setting up on something. But I thought as far as inserting the transmission and getting these pins engaged with this cam plate, I'd do it sideways just like it is here. I've got the crankshaft in now, so it's the turnaround point. It's where I'm starting to put it back together. New seals are in, and the bearings are fine. Everything's nice and clean. There's no chips in anything. Still like to blow out these holes with a air gun, but right now my compressor motor burned up, so that's another little thing I got to fix around here. Okay, this looks like a bunch of fiddling around here to get this together. My theory now is to try to get it together with the shifter forks engaged in the cam. Both of those are in there, but the shaft is not in there. I'll put that in after I get this other shaft in there. This big gear has to go in there first. There's a washer underneath it too. There's a little spacer washer that covers the bearing on the end. One of these things is down in here, and now my idea is to try to put this shaft in there and engage the forks into these grooves as I put that down in there. But I've come to the conclusion that the way to do this is to stack up the gears the way they're supposed to go in the transmission, plus the spacer down in there. I use this thing to try to get that little washer, one of these little thrust washers, to get that square in the center of the hole, so I think the shaft will go in there. Yeah, I got it pretty good in there, I'd say. Not sure if it'll go in there or not. Looks like it will. Then I'm going to try to put this shaft down through the whole stack and get it in there, but it might take some fiddling around to do it. But that would appear to be the only way this is going to go together. Now the problem is getting that little washer in there, right? And I'm doing that with my finger up underneath. Okay, I've got it in there now. All the gears turn real nice. I put this in the neutral position. It's unusual. This large slot seems to be neutral on here. This would be the one for first, I suppose. One down and the rest back. But the trick was to get the little washer in there, which I did with my hand from underneath. I have this stuck on some 4x4s here to hold it up. And once you get that little washer centered on this gear, then it's a matter of turning the shaft back and forth until all the splines engage and the gears engage, and the shaft drops all the way down and engages the teeth. Now the next thing will be to get this down through the shifter forks. Which looks pretty close right there. I can see it down in there, but it's close to going in. Just to go down in a little hole in there. Not much light down in there. It's a little hard to see. There we go. Just needed something to move it. Okay. And of course I got everything oiled up, which makes things a little harder to hold on to too. So next thing be to put this thrust washer on here. and put this little bearing on there, a little roller bearing. That should do it. Now as I rotate this, it should engage different gears. A little hard to do though. There it goes. That's probably first gear there now, see? There we go, nothing to it. Well, I won't say there was nothing to it. A bit of fiddling, that's all it is. So I think now we're ready to offer up the other half after I put the gasket on there. Get these oiled up, but that's probably more fiddling around that than you'd want to look at. I think I would anyways, but maybe I can cut this video down a little bit. My next step for putting this together is to make sure everything's ready to fit the two cases. The two case halves together. I put all the screws, drop them in this case half so that they all stick up about the same length, so that I know which screw fits in which hole, because you want the same amount of thread going into each hole. The only place that I saw a problem with these case halves is where the dowel pins go in. That was kind of bunged up a little bit. Had to take a mill file and make sure that was down flush, was even there. But other than that, I see no big dings or anything like that in it. However, to put this gasket on, I'm going to use, instead of just oiling the gasket like I usually do, I just put oil in the gasket, put them together, and then the gasket don't want to stick to something. I think it would be impossible to get these gaskets off and not damage them anyway. And it's easy enough to clean off if you use this stuff. This is called Yama Bond. The Japanese bikes use it. And I intend to stick this down with that so that it doesn't move so easy on me when I offer up this other case half and start drawing it down with the screws. So there'll be a little film of Yama Bond on each side of this paper gasket. And I think it'll probably prevent any possibility of anything leaking out of there too. I think it'll prevent oil leaks and stuff down here. I want to pay particular attention to this area right here, because that's, if there was oil in there and it was going to leak, it would probably leak through there. So that area's got to be good. I'll shut the camera off because this is going to be kind of finicky and I won't have time to mess with it. Okay, the cases went together, just dropped right down, no problem. There was a little bit of fooling around with the speedometer drive here. You had to kind of work that gear. Then I kind of, after I put the case over the two shafts, I kind of wiggled a little bit, jiggled it, and eventually dropped right down on there. Went on there easy as pie. So now it's time to put the screws in, which, as I say, I have the lengths of them all sorted out so I know which one goes into which hole. And then the next step before I tighten these screws is to put these dowel pins in. The dowel pins have to go in first. That'll get the cases aligned, really just perfectly for what I need. So I'm going to go out and get the dowel pins. I think they're still out in the garage. This is something I should have had ready before I put the cases together, is to polish down these dowel pins, because they were pretty darn tight in there and they were pretty hard to drive out. So chuck them up in the drill press a little bit, polish them a little bit, just make them a little bit looser so they aren't quite so darn tight in there. That was really tight. Now I've got the cases all cinched up tight. Used a screwdriver plus a wrench to make sure they're good and tight. Drew the screws down on the gasket and all that Yama Bond I put in there. That's good stuff to use. Anyways, this thing is free. You want to always check that, make sure everything's free. The transmission gear's turned free. It's in neutral right now, of course. But be ready to put the detent thing in here for the shifter. That's what this thing here is that goes in there. And I'll put that in the spring, and then I think it's pretty well set to put the clutch on. Clutch side, if you want to see it. Looks like so. Yes, that's how it wants to be there. So that's where the clutch is going to go on there. And put all this stuff back together. The chain, the oil pump will be next probably. And I'm going to have this baby socked up